The night had settled around the Delville estate like velvet, heavy, deep, holding secrets. After the engagement celebration, after the last light dimmed in the ballroom, silence took the hallways, gentle and warm. Staff moved softly, footsteps muted by thick carpet and soft chandeliers dimmed to amber glows. Belle sat in Ethan's private lounge, wrapped in a blanket of quiet and perfume of white gardenias drifting in from the courtyard. Her gown had been changed for a silk-slip dress Cassie insisted she wear, simple, soft, elegance without force. Her hair had been let down, the diamonds removed, and the woman in the mirror was not the shining angel from the hall, nor the quiet intern from the hospital. She was something in between, something becoming. She could feel it, like a tide rising inside her. Not fear, not intimidation, not even awe, but transformation. There are moments in life when a person steps across an unseen threshold, and when they turn back, the world no longer recognizes them as who they once were. Tonight had been Belle's step. The door opened softly. Ethan entered. He wasn't in his tuxedo anymore. Just a white shirt, sleeves rolled to his arms, top buttons loosened. He looked different, not the CEO, not the commanding figure everyone bowed for. He looked like a man who had laid down his armor for the night. His eyes found Belle instantly. Not just saw her, found her. He crossed the room and sat beside her, his hand finding hers without searching. Silence wasn't awkward between them. It never was. It was a place, a shared breath, a home. Belle shifted slightly, resting her head against his shoulder. "You're quiet," Ethan murmured, brushing his lips against her hair. Belle smiled faintly, fingers tracing idle patterns on his palm. "There's a lot to think about." He didn't ask what. He didn't need to. Instead, he wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her closer, steady, grounding. "Belle," he said softly, and her name in his voice sounded like a vow. She lifted her head and met his gaze. "I meant every word I said tonight," Ethan continued. "You're not here because of a circumstance. Not because I chose you out of convenience. You're not replacing anyone, and you're not filling a space someone else left behind. You are the beginning of everything new." Belle's chest tightened, not painfully, but deeply, like something inside her expanded too fast. She didn't respond, not out of shock, but because there were no words strong enough to match his sincerity. She leaned in slowly, her lips brushing his, soft, warm, quiet. Ethan returned the kiss, not possessive, not claiming, not demanding. Full, certain, home. When they separated, Belle rested her forehead against his. "I love you," she whispered, steady and sure. Ethan's eyes softened, and a slow smile touched his lips, the rare one, the one that made his features gentler, human, reachable. "And I love you," he breathed. They stay like that, touching, breathing, not needing anything more. But peace has a fragile shape. It doesn't break loudly. It cracks in whispers. 3 days later, the hospital cafeteria buzzed again, but this time differently. Not whispers, not admiration, not curiosity. Shock, excitement, explosive speculation. Belle hadn't even stepped inside before she saw the screens. Every news channel, every business report, every social feed, all showing the same headline. Ethan Delville announces engagement to unknown intern. And beneath, identity revealed, Belle Hart, 21. Medical intern. Photos from the engagement night flooded the media. Belle in the white gown. Ethan looking at her like she held the axis of his world. It was supposed to be private, or at least controlled, yet someone released it early. No permission, no preparation, no protection. Shine gasped beside Belle, hand flying to her mouth. Phil froze with his coffee cup half raised, his eyes wide. "Belle," Shine whispered, voice trembling. "The whole world knows." Belle didn't speak. Her heartbeat did. Steady, grounded, unshaken. But her fingers tightened slightly around her bag strap. She felt eyes on her before she heard the voices. "That's her. The fiancée. She's actually beautiful. How did she? She must be really something. Then, she doesn't look like someone who belongs with him." The words didn't cut. They didn't sting. They didn't shake her. Because Belle knew who she was now. But Phil turned sharply, glare sharp. Shine bristled, ready to start a war. Belle placed a gentle hand on each of their arms. "It's all right," she said softly. They stared at her. Something had changed. Not in her clothes, not in her tone, not in her expression, but in her aura. She wasn't trying to blend anymore. She knew where she stood. Before anyone could react further, a presence entered the cafeteria. Not Ethan. His security detail. Two men in tailored black suits, calm and unobtrusive, approached Belle with the quiet confidence of shadows trained to guard kingdoms. "Miss Hart," one said with a respectful bow of his head, "Mr. Delville sent us to escort you directly. The press is gathered outside." Shine's jaw dropped. Phil blinked once, twice. Belle simply nodded. "Let's go." She didn't hide. She didn't shrink. She didn't hesitate. The cafeteria parted for her, not because of fear or intimidation, but because her presence commanded it now. Not loud, not dramatic, just undeniable. The car door opened, and before she could even step inside, Ethan was there, not waiting inside the car, standing outside, for her, his coat over one arm, his other hand extended toward her, palm open, waiting. The sight hit her like a slow sunrise, warm, bright, certain. Belle stepped forward and placed her hand in his. He leaned close enough that only she could hear. "You're not facing this alone," Ethan murmured. Belle looked up at him, the man the world feared, revered, wanted, and smiled softly. "I never thought I was." Their hands intertwined, not holding, laced, unbreakable. But as the door closed and reporters swarmed outside the gates, another pair of eyes watched from a penthouse across the city. Weston stood at the glass window, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a glass of wine he didn't drink. Not anger, not envy, calculation. He watched Ethan place a hand at the small of Belle's back, watched how she leaned into him, not as someone protected, but as someone chosen. Weston's jaw tensed, not because Belle was the problem, but because she was the answer, the thing that grounded Ethan, made him stronger, made him impossible to attack directly. Weston exhaled slowly. "So that's the shape of your strength now," he murmured. His reflection in the glass looked back at him, calm, patient, resolute. He didn't rush. He didn't rage. He didn't strike. He simply turned from the window and walked toward his desk. There were other ways to break a kingdom. You do not always strike the king. Sometimes, you move the floor beneath the queen. The car glided through the city like a black arrow, sleek, silent, unstoppable. Outside, cameras flashed in explosions of white, reporters pressed forward like waves breaking against armored glass. Security maintained distance, forming a shield around the vehicle as it entered the underground wing of the Delville corporate tower. Belle sat beside Ethan, their hands still laced. Not clinging. Connected. Ethan watched her, studying every shift of her breath. "You're calm," he said quietly. Belle turned her head slightly. "Should I be afraid?" "No," Ethan replied. "But most people would be." Belle only exhaled, slow and steady. "Fear is loud, and I don't want to live loudly anymore." A pause. Then a small smile pulled at Ethan's lips. Soft. Proud. The car rolled to a stop. The door opened. Flashes exploded immediately, but the cameras did not see chaos. They saw poise. Belle stepped out first. Not behind Ethan. Beside him. Her chin lifted. Not high, not arrogant, just level. Let them take pictures. Let them talk. Let them guess. She was no longer the girl who entered the hospital cafeteria months ago. Ethan's hand settled on the small of her back. Guidance, not control. A signal. She is with me. Not owned. Chosen. Their pace matched, stride for stride, step for step, into the polished marble lobby where the press conference awaited. The hall was vast. White stone walls, crystal chandeliers, rows of journalists, cameras mounted like watchful eyes. At the front, 2 chairs and a podium were arranged on a raised platform. When Belle and Ethan walked in, the room hushed. Some saw a story. Some saw a scandal. Some saw a strategy. But a few, only a few, saw love. Ethan led Belle to the podium, then spoke into the microphone. Voice clear, steady, absolute. "Thank you for coming." Not an apology. Not a justification. Simply acknowledgement. The room stilled. I know the news of my engagement reached the public earlier than intended, he continued. But I want to be clear. This is not a rumor, not a speculation, not a misunderstanding. Belle Hart is my fiancé. We are building our future together. Reporters scribbled. Cameras clicked. A few jaws tightened. And for anyone searching for a story of scandal, Ethan paused, gaze sharpening just enough to silence. There isn't one. He stepped aside. Belle didn't speak. She didn't need to. She simply placed her hand on Ethan's arm, gentle, certain, and the gesture itself became headline enough. Not forced affection. Not staged romance. Something real. Real is louder than anything spoken. The conference ended without chaos, without argument, without room for challenge. And that was the problem. The world didn't want quiet love. It wanted drama it could tear apart. Later that afternoon, Belle stood on the balcony of Ethan's office, the city sprawling beneath her like a map of possibilities and consequences. The wind lifted her hair, the air smelled of steel, cloud, and rain waiting to fall. She heard footsteps behind her. She didn't turn. Cassie joined her, wearing a fitted suit and heels too sharp for softness. But her eyes, warm brown, held no edge. You did well, Cassie said. Belle's gaze stayed on the skyline. I didn't speak. That was the power of it. Cassie leaned on the railing beside her. People expect silence to mean weakness. You showed silence can mean certainty. Belle's fingers tightened slightly against the railing. Thank you, she said softly. Cassie studied her for a moment, then exhaled. Belle, there's something you need to be aware of. Belle turned. Cassie's expression had shifted. Not cruel, not heavy but careful. Being with Ethan, Cassie continued, choosing each word with precision. It doesn't just come with attention. It comes with enemies. Belle's heartbeat slowed. Not fear. Readiness. Ethan once had someone he trusted, Cassie said. Someone who didn't just betray him, they tried to destroy him from inside his company. Belle listened. His name is Weston, Cassie said. And he's back. The rain began to fall. Slow. Cold. Steady. Belle didn't flinch. Her voice when she finally spoke was quiet. What does he want? Cassie's answer was simple. To take everything Ethan has. Piece by piece. Starting with you. The rain hit harder, silver streaks across the glass. Belle didn't look away from Cassie. Let him try. No tremor. No break. No doubt. Cassie exhaled. Something like relief and awe mixed in her lungs. You really are the right one, she whispered. Inside, Ethan stood behind the window, watching Belle in the rain. Her posture straight, her presence unbroken, her spirit unshaken. And Ethan knew. Not love. Not affection. Not partnership. Destiny. Across the city, Weston lowered the volume on the press conference replay. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't impressed. He wasn't concerned. He simply smiled. Slow. Cold. Confident. Well done, Ethan, he murmured. You finally found something worth losing. The rain did not stop that night. It fell in soft sheets across the city, humming against glass and metal, slipping down the edges of high-rise towers like quiet whispers of something coming. Belle sat on the couch in Ethan's penthouse, knees drawn up, wrapped in one of his sweaters. The fireplace glowed low, warm, steady. She wasn't anxious, just thinking, holding the day in her hands and turning it over. Ethan entered from the study, loosening his tie. He paused when he saw her, not because she looked fragile, but because she looked centered, strong in a way he didn't have to protect, only stand beside. He sat beside her and pulled her into his arms. No words, just warmth. Belle rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Cassie told you, he said quietly. Belle nodded. About Weston. Ethan exhaled slowly. I should have told you myself. You don't have to shield me, Belle murmured. Ethan was silent for a moment. His hand brushed slowly down her back. I know, he said, but there was something in his voice, not fear, not hesitation, memory, pain carefully buried beneath control. Belle didn't press. She simply shifted closer, fingers lacing with his. The quiet between them was not empty. It was full, living, shared. Morning. The storm had cleared, but the air still tasted of aftermath. Belle arrived at the hospital accompanied by security again, though this time, the presence was subtle, shadows instead of walls. She didn't want a dramatic entrance. She simply wanted to go to work. But the hospital was different today. Not whispering. Watching. Belle could feel it as she walked the hallway, eyes that tried to measure her, compare her, calculate her. People trying to translate her presence into a story that made sense. Belle ignored all of them. She wasn't here to be understood. She was here to save lives. Shine jogged up beside her, clutching a folder to her chest, breath slightly rushed. "You okay?" Shine asked. Belle nodded. "Yes." Shine hesitated, then whispered, eyes shining. "You look like someone who found her place." Belle smiled. Small, quiet. "Maybe I did. But peace is never the whole day." Before lunch, the hospital screens lit up again. This time not engagement news. Something harder. Colder. The headline was bold. Black. Sharp. Scandal questions Belle Hart's medical credentials. Did Delville buy her into the hospital? The cafeteria erupted. Gasps. Whispers. Smirks. Skepticism. She didn't earn her position, so she was placed here. It makes sense. Look who she's with. Phil slammed his tray down, so hard the table rattled. Shine's voice rose, furious. Who would even? Belle didn't react. She simply stood still. Like stillness was armor. Like silence was sword. Then, her phone vibrated. One message from Ethan. "Don't respond. Don't explain. I'm handling it." Belle exhaled once. "Let them talk," she said to Shine and Phil. Phil stared at her. "Belle, this is your reputation." "No." Belle shook her head gently. "This is their projection." Before either could answer, a voice cut across the cafeteria. Smooth. Confident. Sharp as a scalpel. "Well said." Everyone turned. Weston stood in the doorway. He walked toward them like he owned the room, hands in pockets. Calm, eyes observing Belle with interest, not cruelty. He stopped one step too close. "Belle Hart," he said, voice warm like polite weather before lightning. The woman who made Ethan Delville break his own rules. Shine's breath caught. Phil stiffened. Belle looked at Weston. Not intimidated. Not curious. Simply present. "And who are you?" she asked. A single heartbeat. Then Weston smiled. Not friendly. Not mocking. Testing. Someone who used to know Ethan very well. Belle held his gaze. "Used to." Weston's smile widened just a fraction. "Ah," he breathed. "You really are different." The cafeteria watched, frozen. Weston leaned in. Not threatening, only close enough that the air between them sharpened. "Be careful, Belle Hart. Love is a beautiful armor." His voice dropped lower, softer. "But armor can sink you too." Belle didn't blink. "And so can ego." The silence vibrated. Weston's eyes flickered, interest deepening. Not anger. Not offense. Recognition. He stepped back. A gentleman's retreat. "For what it's worth," Weston said, turning away, "I hope you last longer than the others who believed they could stand beside him." He walked out. The room exhaled. Shine grabbed Belle's arm. "Oh my God! Belle, what was that?" Phil stared at Belle like he was seeing her for the first time. Belle picked up her medical notes. Her voice was steady. "That," she said, "was the first strike." Across the city, Ethan stood in front of the window of his office, jaw tight, expression still. He already knew Weston had gone to see Belle. He didn't panic. He didn't storm out. He simply placed his phone down and said, "Cassie, begin the countermeasure." Cassie didn't ask which one. She already knew. The one labeled, "If Weston moves, we move unflinching." The war had begun. Not with violence. With positioning. With silence. With eyes meeting across rooms. With two forces recognizing the other as worthy opponent. And in the middle, Belle. Not a chess piece. Not a shield. Not a weakness. But the queen. The piece that changes the game. The hospital corridors were quiet now. No crowds. No whispers. Just the soft echo of shoes against polished floors. Belle stood at the sink in the scrub room, washing her hands before her afternoon rounds. Water slipped over her fingers, warm and steady. Her reflection in the mirror looked back at her with calm eyes. Not shaken. Not cracked. Not uncertain. Her voice in the cafeteria had been measured, controlled, but inside, a new current had formed. Not rage, not fear. Focus. Weston thought he was studying her, testing her, pressing where he believed she would break. But Weston had made a mistake. He thought Belle was glass. He had not yet learned she was steel, shaped slowly under flame. Belle dried her hands, picked up her patient chart, and walked into the ward. Meanwhile, the Delville boardroom. Ethan stood at the end of a long obsidian table. Members of the board sat in silence. Sharp suits, calculating eyes, pens poised but unmoving. Cassie stood beside him, tablet in hand. Ethan's voice was low, level, controlled. A statement has already been released verifying Belle's credentials, he said. The hospital confirmed her academic record, placement, and performance evaluations. If anyone chooses to continue circulating misinformation, they'll be facing defamation litigation. The board murmured. Not resistance, just acknowledgement. But Ethan wasn't finished. He adjusted his cuff calmly. And I want the investigation opened. The room stilled. One of the board members cleared his throat. Into the leak. No, Ethan's gaze sharpened. Into which department Weston has begun influencing. Cassie swiped her tablet, projecting a web of company branches, subsidiaries, and shell investments across the screen. Small notes glowed red, subtle financial disturbances, barely noticeable, barely detectable, unless someone was looking. Weston's signature. He's not attacking markets, Cassie said. He's undermining your foundation. Slowly, patiently, trying to create imbalance from the base. Ethan nodded once, jaw tightening. He believes time is on his side. His voice dropped, quiet as a knife sliding back into its sheath. He's wrong. Back at the hospital, Belle finished rounds and found Shine waiting for her in the hallway, practically vibrating. Belle, someone's waiting for you. Belle blinked. Who? Her, Shine whispered, pointing. A woman leaned against the wall near the elevators. Tall, jet-black hair pulled into a sleek twist. A suit cut so sharp it could wound. Eyes like polished onyx, unblinking, unreadable. Security, but not hospital security. Delville security. The woman stepped forward. Miss Hart, she said, voice cool as glass. My name is Vega. Mr. Delville asked me to be your personal protection detail. Shine's jaw dropped. Personal what now? Vega continued, unbothered. I'll be in the background. You won't see me. You won't hear me. But if anyone attempts to approach you improperly again, she paused. It will not happen a second time. Belle didn't object. Didn't fuss. Didn't feel caged. She simply nodded. Thank you. Vega's expression didn't change, but her respect sharpened. Most people protest, Vega said. I'm not most people. Vega's lips twitched, something almost like a smile. Noted. Evening, the penthouse. Belle stepped into the penthouse to find Ethan standing on the balcony, sleeves rolled, wind ruffling his hair. The city sunset painted him in amber and smoke blue. She walked to him, slow and sure. He turned as she reached him. There was no question in his eyes, no request for reassurance, just certainty. You handled today, he said. Belle met his gaze. So did you. A quiet moment stretched between them. Then Ethan spoke, low, steady. Weston didn't reveal the rumor by accident. He wanted to force you to react emotionally. Belle looked out over the city lights. He wanted to see if I would break. Yes. Belle's voice was soft, but it landed with weight. Then he didn't understand who I am. Ethan's breath stilled, not from surprise, but from something deeper. Pride, recognition, desire layered with respect. His hand rose, fingers brushing Belle's chin, tilting her face up to his. He will learn, Ethan murmured. Belle's voice was steady. I want him to. Ethan's eyes darkened, not with anger. With promise. He leaned down, kissing her, slow, unhurried, full of something powerful and bone deep. When they parted, there was no softness left between them. Only alliance. Only love sharpened into weapon. Only two forces preparing to stand together. Across the city, Weston sat in a private lounge, watching the evening news replay. They showed Belle at the hospital. Not shrinking. Not hiding. Not shaken. Weston leaned back. And for the first time, His smile faded. Just slightly. So, he whispered. The Queen moves early. He did not fear that. He respected it. But everything had just changed. Because queens don't defend. Queens protect by advancing. And the game was no longer silent. Morning broke soft and golden across the city, but inside Ethan's world, something shifted. Quiet, precise, surgical. Belle noticed it first. Not in Ethan's posture. Not in his voice. But in the silence behind his eyes. They ate breakfast together in the penthouse kitchen, sunlight spilling across marble and steel. Belle sliced strawberries. Ethan read the morning financial report. Normally, this was calm, routine, a shared rhythm. But today, Ethan wasn't reading. He was watching. Not her. The world. Measuring it. Preparing. Belle placed the knife down gently. What happened? Ethan looked up. No shock, no deflection. She didn't ask if something was wrong. She already knew. He inhaled slowly. One of our subsidiaries was breached overnight. Belle stilled. Which one? Ethan hesitated. That alone was answer. Belle's voice lowered. Which one, Ethan? He met her eyes. Foundation Hope. Belle's breath caught. Foundation Hope. The medical outreach program Ethan funded. The one that gave free treatment to underprivileged communities. The one Belle volunteered at during weekends. Her hand curled around the edge of the table. How bad? Bad enough, Ethan said. Donor accounts were compromised. Funds frozen. Belle stared at him. This wasn't about money. No, Ethan said. It was about association. Destroying Belle's image. Attacking Ethan's public integrity. Damaging trust in the one thing he built for the world. Not profit, but purpose. Weston knew exactly where to strike. Ethan leaned back in his chair, eyes cold and sharp. He wants the public to think I used the foundation to elevate you. That you are benefiting from charity tied to my name. Belle felt something twist inside her, not fear. Rage. Quiet, controlled rage. Then we respond, she said. We will. Ethan's voice was calm steel. But not yet. Belle frowned. Why not? Because Weston wants speed. Reaction. Chaos. He looked at her with the steadiness of stone. We answer on our timeline, not his. Belle held his gaze, then nodded. But something was already unraveling outside the penthouse walls. At the hospital, Belle stepped into the ward and felt it instantly. Distance. Not curiosity this time. Discomfort. Nurses stopped talking when she walked by. Residents avoided her table. Doctors greeted her with polite smiles a shade too thin. Not hostility. Worse. Doubt. Shine hurried to her, face pale. Belle, don't look now, but they're saying online that the foundation paid for you. Like your schooling. Your placement. Everything. Phil stepped up beside them. It's trending everywhere. Belle didn't move. Didn't blink. She simply closed her locker door, slow and steady. Do you believe it? She asked. Shine's eyes widened. No. Of course not. Phil swallowed. Belle, we know who you are. Belle nodded once. Then nothing else matters. But her heart tightened. Not from the rumor. From realizing how fast the world wants to tear down what it doesn't understand. Elsewhere, a rooftop bar. Weston leaned against the railing, city lights reflecting in his eyes like constellations he controlled. A woman stood beside him, dark green dress, heavy gold earrings, expression unreadable. She spoke first. You didn't attack his money. No, Weston said. You didn't attack his company. No. She glanced at him. You attacked his name. Weston smiled faintly. That is where legacy lives. And where legacy breaks. The woman looked back out over the city. So what now? Weston's gaze sharpened, gaze narrowing toward the horizon. Now, he said softly, I wait. That evening, the penthouse balcony. Belle stood outside, arms wrapped loosely around herself. The wind was cool, brushing her hair back, carrying the faint scent of rain that always lingered in this city. Ethan stepped out beside her. Belle didn't turn. He's not trying to ruin me, Belle said quietly. He's trying to make me feel unworthy. Yes, Ethan replied. Belle exhaled. The air tasted metallic, like something forging inside her. I won't break, she said. Ethan stepped closer, his hand sliding along her waist, grounding her. I know, he murmured. Belle stared at the city lights flickering below. But Ethan, he's not really trying to get to me. Ethan's hand paused. Belle's voice lowered. He's trying to get to you. Silence. Ethan closed his eyes, not from fear, but from recognition of truth. Belle leaned into him. I won't let myself be the reason you bleed, she said. Ethan turned her to face him, hands firm on her waist, gaze fierce. Belle. His voice was low, unshakable. You are not my weakness. Belle searched his eyes. What am I? Ethan didn't blink. My strength. The city moved below them, alive, relentless. And above it, two people stood against the storm coming. Together. Across the city, far above the streets, Weston watched from his penthouse window. Hands in pockets, expression unreadable. The reflection of Belle and Ethan, unbroken, united, burned in the glass in front of him. For the first time, his jaw tightened. Just slightly, he whispered to the empty room. So the king has something worth defending. His eyes darkened. Good! Because wars are only beautiful when both sides refuse to fall. The city was sleepless. News of the Foundation scandal had spread like wildfire, threaded through headlines, whispered through corridors, echoed inside boardrooms and break rooms alike. Yet, inside the Delville penthouse, the world felt impossibly still. Belle sat by the window that evening, watching rain smear the city lights into blurred ribbons of gold and blue across the glass. She tucked her knees close to her chest, her engagement ring glinting faintly as she held her arms around herself. She wasn't crying. She hadn't shed a single tear. Ethan watched her from the doorway. Her stillness unnerved him, because Belle was rarely still. She lived with quiet movement, the soft hum of her laughter, the habit of twirling her hair when nervous, the gentle way she touched the world. But tonight, she sat like carved stone. She did not break. She held herself together with a grace that would have shattered anyone else. Ethan stepped forward. Belle didn't turn. Come here, he whispered. And she did, rising slowly, like the ocean rising to shore. He wrapped her into his chest. Her hands clutched the back of his shirt, not desperate, not shaken, simply anchoring. I hate that they're talking about you, Belle said quietly, her voice muffled against him. I hate that they're twisting who you are. I hate that they want to make you into something shallow and cruel. Ethan exhaled against her hair. They don't know me. And then, after a moment, but Weston does. Belle stilled. He's not doing this to expose anything, Ethan murmured. He's doing it to provoke reaction. Belle understood, but something else tangled through her thoughts. Why does he hate you? The question landed between them, heavy and quiet. Ethan's fingers paused against her back. Not hate, he said. Not exactly. Belle waited. He wants something that belongs to me. Belle's heart slowed, just once, before returning to its steady pace. And now, Ethan said softly, he thinks you're one of those things. Belle leaned back enough to meet his eyes. I'm not a possession, Ethan. No, Ethan said, his gaze steady, unblinking. You're the one thing I chose. The air shifted. Something tender. Something dangerous. Something unbreakable. The next morning, the world did not wait for them to breathe. Belle walked into the hospital, and whispers rippled behind her like shadows. Is that really her? The CEO's fiancée? They say she didn't earn the internship. No, she's brilliant. Have you seen her charts? But the foundation money. Belle walked through all of it. Straight spine. Quiet breath. Steady steps. Shine and Phil flanked her sides. Unspoken guardians in scrubs and exhausted caffeine eyes. You're trending again. And not the cute aesthetic way, Phil sighed. Belle didn't slow. Let them talk. Shine's voice cracked just slightly. Belle, does it not hurt you? Belle smiled. Soft. Real. Achingly strong. It used to. But not anymore. Shine didn't understand how. Phil didn't either. But Belle did. She had already lived through the kind of loneliness that people try to shame her with now. She had already known what it felt like to lose a world. She had already found something bigger than the opinions of strangers. She had Ethan, and more importantly, she had herself. But rumors were not the real blow. Rumors were smoke. The fire followed hours later. Belle was reviewing patient charts when a message blinked onto her phone. From unknown number. Meet me. Rooftop. Now. Belle froze. Shine glanced at her screen. Oh no, Shine whispered. That's... Belle didn't wait. She was already moving. The rooftop was cold. Wind tugged at her scrubs, lifted loose strands of her hair. Sylvia stood waiting. Not in a gown. Not in heels. Just a fitted black coat and her hair tied back, exposing the sharp symmetry of her face. No cameras. No audience. Just two women. Belle, Sylvia greeted, voice calm. Controlled. Polished like museum marble. Belle stopped a few feet away. Why did you call me? Sylvia studied her with the quiet, patient attention of someone who made a career observing what others missed. I came here to tell you something, Sylvia said simply. Belle waited. Sylvia stepped closer, not threatening, not invasive, just near enough that Belle could see the faintest hint of tiredness behind her perfect eyes. Ethan is not what they say, Sylvia began. You need to know that. He didn't build the foundation to polish his image. He built it because he... Belle's gaze softened at the sharp shift in Sylvia's tone. Because he cared. Sylvia swallowed. Yes. Belle nodded once. I know. Something flickered in Sylvia's chest. Relief, brief and sharp. But that's not the only reason I came. Sylvia's voice lowered. There is something you must understand. Belle waited. Sylvia met her gaze head-on. Weston is not finished. Belle's fingers tightened at her sides. Sylvia continued. He will go for public opinion. For media. For investor confidence. For any thread he can unravel to make Ethan bleed without touching him directly. Belle breathed slowly. And he will try to reach you. Sylvia's voice didn't waver. He will slip where the world cannot see him. He will whisper where no one can hear him. He will offer what sounds like truth. He will shape doubt. And doubt, Sylvia said quietly, is the weapon that destroys from the inside. Belle's heart didn't race. She was calm. Too calm. Thank you for telling me, she said. Sylvia looked almost surprised. You're not afraid. Belle exhaled softly. I have already survived losing everything once, she said. I can't be destroyed by rumors and shadows. I know who I am. I know who Ethan is. The world can keep their stories. I'm living my own. Sylvia stared at her, really stared. Something shifted. Not rivalry. Not resentment. Recognition. Respect. You're stronger than anyone realizes, Sylvia murmured. Belle gave the faintest smile. You too. Silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable, not sharp. Just two women who understood the weight of the worlds they walked. Sylvia stepped back. Then be ready, she said. Because Weston won't come at you like a storm. She looked into Belle's eyes. He will come like a friend. Belle felt the wind press against her skin. No, Belle said quietly. He will come like a mirror. Sylvia's breath caught. Because Belle was right. That night, Ethan returned late. Belle was awake, sitting in bed, hair loose, face calm. He sat beside her. No words. Just their breathing aligning. Belle leaned her head against his shoulder. We will not lose, Ethan said quietly. No, Belle said. We will not. He took her hand. Their fingers interlocked. Steady. Unbroken. A promise. Outside, the city pulsed and shifted, preparing for the storm that was coming. Inside, two hearts beat with one truth. What they had was not fragile. It was forged. And war was only beginning.